This is William K. Murtaugh, Witness 1. And we go through another day of Field McConnell being in jail, and another day where we have not heard from Timothy Holmseth. Now, a number of interesting things have happened over the last couple days that have to do with sources of information and who is right and who is not right. Now, what I'd like to do is kind of start off with making a correction here. A while back, I had posted a slide where one of these listing companies, or information companies, I guess you could call them, that lists houses and other addresses and a history and information regarding that particular location. In this case, it had to do with Field McConnell's house. Now, two things came up in there. One was an alert having to do with a registered sex offender, and another alert was an environmental hazard. Now, what I'm going to correct here is the one about the sex offender listing. Now, when I put that up, the listing company that I used as the source did not make any disclaimer when it came to the details of this listing and how it came about. And it was forgotten about. I went on. This is something I did, I guess, about 2 weeks ago. Someone contacted me within the last couple days and said I was wrong, that the registered sex offender notification was apparently to anybody within a certain distance of the residence and not in the residence itself. And the individual gave me a detailed account of what they were able to find out. So I got corrected. I was wrong on this particular fact, apparently. But also, my source was wrong, because my source did not spell out how it came up with that listing. Now, this is another source of information that I got corrected on to some extent. And this is something where the individual and I were both right and both wrong. And this had to do with Field McConnell and the daily reports of whether or not he is in the Pierce County Jail. Now, Pierce County is a little slow on updating their information. And I stated that it was after midnight that Pierce County updated its jail roster. And I'll use an example. If Field McConnell was still in the Pierce County Jail on Monday, we would not know it until Tuesday, because Pierce County does not update their jail roster on the same day. It's done after midnight, which is what I stated. And the exact information, apparently, according to their website, is that they will update their information by 6:30 the next day. So Pierce County, Wisconsin is always a day behind on reporting who is in prison. So Field McConnell is in jail today, and he does not make his phone call today, we will not know if he is still in prison until tomorrow, unless some independent source comes out and says that Field McConnell is in jail. So that's the correction there. This goes to show how sometimes it helps to check multiple sources. And then on top of that, something else happened that's totally really unrelated to any of this. Somebody shared with me an article, or I guess it was a video, on Facebook that claims that an FBI agent shot his wife, then himself, and that he had set fire to the house and it burned to the ground. Now, something seemed a little off about that story, so I went and checked the video that was linked in there, and I said, okay, I'm going to check this out. So I did a Google search based on the name of the FBI agent and his age, and ran it, and I came up with about a half a dozen sources of information regarding this particular incident, including one from the Snopes. Now, this is a source. Now, the person who I was having the discussion with, when I got the information from Snopes, which in great detail explained how this was a false story that was completely made up by a newspaper that doesn't exist, I still couldn't convince this person that it was a false story. He says, no. He says that's a Democratic propaganda site funded by George Soros. So the information, no matter how detailed it was dismissed outright because of the source of the information. I said, fine. I'll take it a step further. I searched out another source, and that source said the same thing. That the FBI agent, Michael Brown, does not exist. Never existed. That the story was completely made up. And they went through detail by detail by detail as to why the story is fake. Now, the story mentioned a couple details that are easily checked out. I mean, if you want to bug people to the ends of the earth about it, you can. Number one, it's where the story happened, which is Maryland. Okay, this is a murder-suicide. Major story. It's also arson in the commission of a murder-suicide. This would have been a hell of a big story. Should have been in at least state newspapers, on local media. Should have been a police report, all kinds of stuff. Guess what? Nothing. In fact, the dispatcher at the police department I called told me he wished people would quit calling up about this story because they've been debunking it for years. This is a 4-year-old story, and we're tired of it. Because it never happened. We never had an officer by that name in our department. There was never a fire. There was none of this stuff. And people keep calling us about it. You know, and this is my point. Is that fake news has gotten to the point where if you trust the person that's telling you the story, you're going to believe it whether it's true or not. This is why people like Field McConnell and Tim Holmseth are able to get away with this nonsense, because people believe them. People have faith in them. And the simple reason in a lot of these cases is because, A, Field McConnell supports Donald Trump. B, Field McConnell is a Bible thumper. So it's kind of hard to fight Donald Trump in the Bible because of bias. An all-encompassing word, bias. Now, I'm surprised as hell that half the people I talk to on my show believe me because I'm not a Trump supporter. But we all have one thing in common. We've come to realize that people like Tim Olmsted and Phil McConnell, sometimes I think those two ought to get married, those two are fake. They're frauds. They're liars. And it's been proven time and again. But there had to be a lot of hurdles that had to be overcome to get to this point, because people have believed in these two for years, and there are people that still believe in them. They won't shake their belief regardless of how ridiculous their claims are. I mean, the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force is absolutely nonsensical. And the fact that Tim Holmseth goes out there and says he's third in line to the President of the United States is nonsensical, because he's an unemployed pizza delivery driver. He doesn't have the credentials. And, you know, you go down line by line by line, fact by fact by fact, and break this down, you realize just how silly this whole thing is. But there are people out there, no matter how much proof you show them, and how much you try and convince them, they are not going to believe that Tim Holmseth is an idiot and a pathological liar. They're going to believe that this guy is telling the truth. He doesn't make stuff up. You know, and it's like, you know, you're just up against a wall that you can't get around or over. Because people will not set bias aside. And these incidents that I have outlined prove it. You know, anybody with any common sense would realize that a certain claim or what have you is not true. That there's been the burden of proof has been met over and over and over again, yet you still haven't convinced people that what they are believing in is a lie. It's false. It's made up. And that's what's wrong with everything. That you're not going to believe the truth if it comes from the wrong source. It has to come from a source that you trust. And sometimes the source that you trust is not a source that should be trusted. Now, so where do we go from here? Well, I'm going to keep plugging away, debunking lies as I find them, and it's going to be up to each and every individual to fact check. Use multiple sources. Use sources you trust. Use sources you don't trust. Use sources that would be the most common sense ones to check for information. Now, I'll tell you an interesting side note about the name that was used in this report. And how whoever authored the original fake news came up with this nonsense, and that is the person's name. For if you go through and Google the name, you'll find out that there was a shooting, but it was by law enforcement, and it was a civilian that was shot, and that there was an investigation by the FBI against the person who did the shooting and why the shooting took place. This was a big story in St. Louis about this black kid that got shot by a cop. And so for whatever reason, probably as a practical joke, whoever made the original story up used it. And then the source that shared it on Facebook got it from that person and blindly put it in there, and it got passed to the person that I got argued with, because the person who posted this story blindly posted it without checking to see if it was true or not. And this is how the stuff gets spread around. Headline goes up there accusing Hillary Clinton of something, or implicating her in something in some remote way, the person that puts the story up doesn't check to see if the story is true, and it gets passed around. And so then when it gets put on somebody's Facebook that I happen to know, and I question him, he says, well, this is the person that gave the story. So go back to the person that gave the story, and says, no, I got this off of this newspaper out in Colorado or wherever the hell it took place. And I check and find out that the newspaper didn't even exist. It's multiple sourcing. You have to backtrace to get to the original source, and then you have to check the information from the original source to see if it's true or not. 99% of the cases I have found that these stories are false. But it was like, I was sitting there beating the guy over the head with facts, with evidence. Broke it down to its individual elements. I broke it down to the incident. I broke it down to the person named in the incident. All of it. And I couldn't get it through this person's head that it was a fake. He said, well, go confront the guy that shared it with me. And I'd get in the same argument with this guy. It's like he passed it off. He says, well, I just go talk to the guy that before me. And you get this pattern where the guy that shared it on Facebook says, well, go talk to the guy that put it on Facebook. You go to the guy that put it on Facebook, he says, well, go talk to the person that published it in the first place. Because these people blindly put things up on the internet without checking to see if they're true or not. Because it matches their bias. They say, oh, this is a story that makes Hillary look bad, so I'm going to share it. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. If you don't believe it, you're going to have to go and check it yourself. And the story sits out there for 4 years now because people are too lazy to check the facts. They see an article and they say, oh, this Hillary looks bad. I'm going to put this on my Facebook. Put it on Facebook. Everybody reads it, assumes it's true because they know you. You're a reliable source. And it turns out that you're not a reliable source because the information you put up is fake. And this brings us back to Timothy Charles Homeseth. This is what happens. Timothy Charles Homeseth has built up trust in people. People think he's telling the truth. People think he's reliable. And so his fish stories get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it starts out with Timothy Homeseth falsely accusing someone of being involved in this trafficking operation. That this woman somehow gets a hold of babies through CPS, sells them on the black market into sex trafficking and satanic rituals and all this. Because Tim Homeseth takes advantage of bias. Now, this is another example, and this is why Tim Homeseth is able to get away with what he gets away with. There are a lot of people out there, and I mean a lot of them, that believe all the stories about CPS abuses and about all this wild stuff that's going on with CPS. Because they take a core truth, an isolated incident, 2, 3, maybe a dozen, and it gets blown all out of proportion. I've got somebody sending me videos alleging abuses by CPS, about people walking out of CPS meetings for whatever reason. And the core truth may be there, but is it the whole truth and nothing but the truth? This is where you have to fact check. You have to go back to the source of the story and keep backtracking until the truth comes out as to actually what is the truth and the context of the story. Why did the walkout take place? What are the circumstances? Did it even happen? So on and so forth. All sorts of things. And people are just too lazy to do that. They just say, oh, the video speaks for itself. Boom. That's the end of the story. And trying to shake people and make them understand that maybe there's more there than meets the eye is nearly impossible. And it gets to the point where you just want to give up and say the hell with it. There's no point in beating it down. You can't lead a horse to water and force him to drink it. You just can't. And this is the frustration. But this is also how Timothy Homeseth, Bill McConnell, Preacher Dan, and all these other people are able to spread all this crap. And it's the simple reason that people refuse to seek out the truth. And when the truth is given to them, if it's from the wrong source, they simply won't believe it. And this is not just on one side of the political spectrum. I am finding this all over the place. That there are people out there dispensing false information on the left and the right. And people will not believe the truth and that these stories are fake because of the source of the truth. And until people get over this bias, the truth is never going to come out. The truth is always going to be there, whether you see through your bias or not. Truth is truth, and it is always the truth. You have to be willing to set aside your bias and find that truth. And when the truth is brought to you, you have to admit that you may have been wrong. Like I was wrong about the house. Like I was wrong about the jury or the inmate roster. And I may have been wrong about other things. Once these errors in judgment or statements are made, I correct myself. This is what other people need to do. They need to correct their mistakes. They say, okay, I made a mistake. I believe something that wasn't true. I stand corrected. Some people do and some people don't. Some people are going to fight until the bitter end, until they reach a point where they have to understand that they are wrong. And it's only then that the truth and the absolute truth will come out, and then corrections can be made. This is where the people who believe Tim and Field have to get to. They have to get to a point where they understand that Tim Homeseth is not telling the truth. He never has, he never will. Same with Bill McConnell. Bill McConnell lied. He lied a lot, and he continues to lie on a daily basis. And people are not willing to admit that he lied, because then they have to admit that they were wrong in believing Bill McConnell in the first place. And they were wrong in believing Tim Homeseth. They won't admit that. They won't allow themselves to. It's human nature. And they will fight until the bitter end. And that's unfortunate. Because in the end, all the lies that these individuals tell isn't accomplishing anything. Nothing, no benefits coming from their lying. They're doing a great deal of harm, if anything, with their lying. Because they're diverting from the truth. Now, is there a problem with CPS? Is there a problem with child trafficking and sex trafficking and maybe even with satanic ritual abuse? Probably. But you're not going to find the truth by lying about it or exaggerating it. You're going to find the truth out by telling the truth. Find out what the core truth is here. The source. What happened? What actually happened? What's real? That's where you find the truth. You don't find it from fake news websites and these made-up things, and from people that declare that they're an agent of the United States government and are a spokesperson for the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force and the Children's Crusade, and that they somehow are going to get $7.5 million a day for being unlawfully incarcerated, and they're going to go and buy this big ranch in Texas to help out veterans. Because it's all lies. Every bit of it. Common sense will dictate that it's a lie. How in the hell is a guy that can't even pay his own bills going to come up with $700 million or $220 million, whatever it is, to buy a ranch in Texas? You know, and then he talks about Zim currency, which has been proven time and again to be a scam, and other wacko things that come up in the news. You know, one of the weirdest hoaxes in the history of this country got so many people convinced that it was possible that an agency of the United States government had to debunk it. And I'm talking about this idiotic claim that there was a child sex colony on Mars. People actually believed that crap. And it took NASA had to come out in a press release and say that it's not true, that we don't have colonies on Mars. We're not even capable of sending a rocket to Mars right now. The earliest we're going to go to Mars is 2030, 2040 or whatever. And it's, you know, but trying to talk common sense to people is nearly impossible because people believe what they want to believe. Another example of this is, sadly, this coronavirus. There is a lot of misinformation about this thing that's going around, and by people that, under other circumstances, I trust. Now, I haven't touched this subject because I don't believe it. I don't believe a lot of what's being told about this. Is this a serious disease? Yes. Is it getting spread around? Yes. But some of the things that are coming out as side stories are completely false. But I'm not going to argue about it. I'm not interested in it. But it's there. Same thing. Somebody got bitch slapped by Facebook because they put misinformation up about this subject. Because Facebook has hired fact checkers, independent fact checkers, to go through and find out what's going on with these stories. And if they find that it's false information, you get hit with one of these little notifications that it's fake. And it's up to the person viewing the Facebook page if they want to see it or not. But you're given that disclaimer that this might be false information. And the person whose page it is one of these conspiracy theorists and a supporter of Tim Homestead. And there's all kinds of nonsense out there. You know, Kobe Bryant can't even escape it. I mean, there's already conspiracy crap about his death. And he hadn't even been buried yet. There hadn't been a funeral or any of that. And they're smearing the guy's name. You can't even die in this country without somebody making a conspiracy theory out of it. That's a sad reality. Just the way it is. You know, in a way we did that with Tim Homestead. The guy hasn't been heard from for 2 weeks. There's a friend of his in Virginia that's going nuts because she hasn't heard from him. And so all the conspiracy theories come up. What happened to Tim Homestead? Why haven't we heard from him? People say, oh, he's under an assumed name. He's still healthy as a horse. He's doing all this stuff in secret. Somebody else says, oh, he's on assignment and all this stuff. You can't fact check because there's no place to fact check. He's just completely, he's vanished. There's no verifiable information about Tim Homestead anywhere. This is just like the original situation I started off with. Somebody put something up there. How do you fact check it? You can't call Tim Homestead up on the phone and say, hey, are you all right? Because he's gone dark. He's made it impossible for people to contact him. There's no reliable way of tracking down where Tim Holmseth is. Because it boils down to trust. Are you going to trust the source? If somebody gets on the internet right now and says, I just got through talking to Tim Holmseth. He's fine, no problems. He just decided he's going to settle back and not say a word. He's tired of it. He's given up, whatever. And whatever reason they come up with for Tim Holmseth not being online for 2 weeks is not going to get believed because of the source. And even if Tim Holmseth were to be seen tomorrow driving his little car around, or gets on YouTube, or gets on Facebook, does another one of his videos, people are going to say, well, he's a clone. Because that story went around. Some idiot on Facebook put up a story that Kim Picasio was flown to Gitmo and was cloned. I mean, that's the stupidest thing I have heard from this woman. Because we haven't got that far scientifically yet. You can't clone somebody. Not in the way that she's talking about. If you want to clone a goat or clone a sheep, you can clone a goat or clone a sheep, but it's not going to be the same sheep. It's going to be a copy of the sheep. It's going to have its own personality and so forth. It's kind of like a scientific way of incest, because all you're doing is you're duplicating something, but you're not duplicating the memories. You can't duplicate a person's memory or any of that. Which is funny, because there's actually a soap opera where they explored that. And it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen on a soap opera. But people actually believe this kind of stuff is possible. And it's not. You cannot clone somebody. And I'm surprised that I'm even talking about this. That people actually would believe that this crap is possible when it's not. But, here we go again. People will believe what they want to believe, not the truth. And so we go on, and we go on, and we go on, debunking this, debunking that, convincing some, convincing none, day in and day out. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth going on my daily rants, my ramblings, as someone says, and talking about this stuff. Because then you get hit with, well, you're wrong about this, you're doing this wrong, so on and so forth. And all I can say is I do the best I can. And if I make a mistake, if I get something wrong, whether it be completely wrong or partly wrong, I expect to be called out. I say, hey, this is wrong. This is what you said. It's not exactly right. I'll say, fine, I stand corrected. I've done it for years. Because I'm not perfect. I'm not a Vulcan. They say Vulcans are supposed to be perfect. And the funny thing is, you watch some of the stars in Star Trek, they gave proof that Vulcans aren't always perfect. And they can get caught up. So that, even a fictional character can be imperfect. Kind of weird that I went off in that direction, but it's just, it's a point of sorts. But I digress. Everybody out there is going to believe what they want to believe, whether it's the truth or not the truth. All I can do is present what I present, just like everybody else does, and it's up to the individual to decide what they're going to believe and not believe, whether or not they're going to completely check out what is said or not said, and go from there. Now, there are people that check what I say pretty thoroughly. And that's what I want. Did I get something wrong? I want to know about it so I can correct it. Not wait 2 weeks and tell me. I want to know right there and then. Say, if last night I said something wrong and I got something wrong, I want to know what it was I got wrong. I'll check it, and if I was wrong, I was wrong. I don't declare myself right about anything. Because again, I base my information on whatever source I use for that information. Now, as for conjecture, I may draw a conclusion based on what I see and experience. But I say it. I say, this is my opinion. It's conjecture, perhaps. But it's not fact. And that's a distinction that has to be made. That when you're guessing about someone or you're engaging in conjecture, you're doing just that. You're guessing. You're not basing what you're saying on the absolute truth. You're basing it on bias and on a belief. And as long as people understand that, they can take what you're saying and conjecturing about on their own terms. Now, Saturday I'm going to discuss the Cindy Absuk situation. I'm going to discuss part 3 of the story that was done by Northwest Liberty News about the final days of this sightseeing tour that these people took of the United States. Now, I've listened to some of the program, and what I heard was rather interesting. And what I heard was that people finally began to understand that they relied on the wrong source. They relied on the wrong people. In this case, Field McConnell and these women that were saying that they were helping out. And they got an education too late that they had gone down the wrong road. Now this gets into another area where I had made several statements that may or may not turn out to be true. And I got into an argument about this. Now, one of the things that's come out is that I have stated several times what I feel is going to happen to Field McConnell when he comes to Florida. That he's going to go on trial for what he's done, and that there's a possibility he's going to go to jail. Now, someone's said that that is likely not going to happen, that because of only 2% of cases go to trial or something along those lines, that Field McConnell may not go on trial. Has to do with caseload, various other factors that this individual came up with. Now that person may be right. I'm not going to say that person's wrong. That's a possibility. Because what I said is my opinion. And you got to remember, it's my opinion based on the number of times that I have sat in on court proceedings here in Florida. Mainly in Orange County, which is a very busy circuit. The 9th Judicial Circuit is a busy circuit here in Orlando. A lot of different cases go through there. Some very minor, some very high profile. We had a guy that killed his girlfriend and an Orange County police officer. Guy decided to be his own lawyer. Made for a major case. Went on trial. There are some minor cases that go on trial. Similar to what's going on with Field McConnell. Sometimes these are bench trials, sometimes they're jury trials. Normally they last a day, maybe two. A lot of times these cases go before the court. They're heard in their entirety in one day. Jury deliberates, comes out with a verdict within a couple hours. Doesn't take long at all. I was a jury foreman on a rape case. Didn't take long for that case to get through the court. We deliberated for 3 hours, asked the judge a couple questions, and we came to a verdict, and that was the end. Person was sentenced to prison because he was adjudicated guilty, and he went to prison. End of story. And it's on this basis, with all these different cases that I've sat in on and continue to sit on, that I outlined what I feel was going to happen with Field McConnell when he came to Florida. And the same goes for Colorado. Because it all boils down to how badly do these courts want to pursue these individual cases. Now, logic would dictate that they are going to more than likely do something with this woman because they went through all the trouble of extraditing her from another state, and because of what she is alleged to have done, that she was attempting to kidnap a child through force. It's a serious offense. Would have had serious ramifications had they gone through with what they were alleged to have done. Now, maybe the prosecutor or the district attorney or whoever will look at this and say, well, let's not take this to trial. Let's plead this out. Let's see if there's some arrangements can be made to get justice done without sending this woman off to prison. That may happen. Crazier things have happened in court. Things that we could argue about for years. But it's not an absolute process. There's variables. It may happen here. There may be no formal trial. And I've tried to outline that. I've given a number of solutions. That she pleads out, throws herself on the mercy of the court. That she turned state's evidence in return for immunity for other criminals that were involved in the various crimes, and so on. And I've said this for everything that's going on, because there are investigations going on right now at a federal level and for a number of different reasons. And I stated my opinion as to what the outcome of these various cases are going to be. That a lot of people have a lot to worry about. Because there's that possibility that somebody's going to jail and that their lives are going to get disrupted. And it doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong, regardless of what happens. It's not in my hands to make all these decisions. All I can do is guess. That's all anybody can do is guess. People that argue with me and say, no, this is going to happen differently, are making a guess based on their experiences, based on their knowledge base. And they may be the ones that are right. And so that's what you have to go by. You have to go by who might be right or who might be wrong. And we are not going to know that until everything plays out. We are not going to know until people either go to court or don't go to court, get released from jail or don't get released from jail, and so forth. Now, in the case of Field McConnell, as of right now, to the best of my knowledge, he is still sitting in the Pierce County Jail. When I checked 2 hours ago, he was there yesterday. And he's probably there today. Now, generally, 1:30, 2 o'clock at the latest, his jailhouse video hits the internet. And so if he makes a video today, or has made a video today, since this video will probably not be up on YouTube until 8 or 9 o'clock tonight Eastern Time, maybe a little earlier, we won't know. If he makes this jailhouse call, we can assume that he's still there, as of the time he made the call. But one of the hints we're going to have that Phil McConnell is no longer in Pierce County is when we don't get that jailhouse call. Because that means that either his canteen money has run out, or he's leaving on a jet plane to Florida. Law enforcement does not announce when they're going to pick somebody up. They call up the law enforcement, the jail, I should say, that has the prisoner. Says, all right, we're on our way. We'll be there. Pick them up. This is when we're going to be there. We'll have the forms that we need to have to sign them out, so on and so forth. And they'll come pick them up. And he'll be whisked away to the state of Florida. And nobody's going to know about it. You know, unless there's someone that's going to sit out in the county jail 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, waiting on Phil McConnell to come popping out, they're not going to know. You know, for all we know, we have no idea what security arrangements are going to be made to get Phil McConnell out of the county jail. So anybody that might decide to hold vigil over there may or may not catch a glimpse of Phil McConnell leaving. Because if that county jail does what they do down here in Florida, you're not going to know. Because they have what they call a sally port, where a van with no windows will go in to the jail. The prisoner will be loaded out of sight of the public, and the van will leave, and you won't know who the hell's in the van. Now, Phil McConnell's not a high-profile prisoner. At the most, he's a nuisance. But other than that, he's not the kind of prisoner where they may not take these elaborate precautions, and if somebody were to hold vigil at that jail, they might catch a glimpse of Phil and say, oh, he's on his way. And they could chase him down to the airport and make protests and so forth. But it's not going to change. He's still going to Florida. So. But I doubt any of that's going to happen. I doubt anybody's going to take the time to try and figure out the exact minute that Phil McConnell leaves prison. He may not leave prison until Friday. We're in a countdown of sorts. Because somebody may pull a legal rabbit out of their hat and try and delay this once again. You know, Chris Hallett or someone's going to send some legal mumbo jumbo, or this crackpot retired woman judge or whatever the hell she is going to come up with some crackpot nonsense to delay things. Probably not going to happen, but you never know. This whole situation's been weird. I mean, I didn't expect Phil McConnell would be stupid enough to get himself in this mess in the first place. I mean, he didn't accomplish anything. Makes death threats against the mother of 3 children. Calls her names. Makes accusations without a shred of proof other than the word of an unemployed pizza delivery driver he hasn't known very long. And because of some self-published book. And again, we get the sources. Because this is the source for all this is an unemployed pizza delivery driver that wrote a book. A self-published book, I might add. He didn't go to Simon and Schuster and sell the book. He paid a printing company to print them out of pocket. Say, here, publish this book. The publisher gets no royalties. The only one that gets any royalties is Amazon. They charge a fee to sell this crap. But they don't care, they don't care, they don't fact check the book. It's not their responsibility. All they're doing is distributing it. And so Tim Homseth becomes a published author. Core truth. Yeah, you can go around and say, yeah, I'm a published author. I paid to get published, but I published it. I didn't go out and hire a literary agent to go out and peddle this thing to a publisher, and then the publisher gives me an advance and then promotes the book. No, I did that all on my own. Anybody can do it. You can go out tomorrow and become a published author. Just like you can become a journalist. No formal training required. Just shell out $5,000 as a minimum order for a publisher to publish your work. Send them the manuscript and they'll publish it. Doesn't mean you're going to sell the book. You may wind up with a closet full of books. It's kind of funny, in a way. I went to an auction a few months back. And in the corner of the auction were all these books, hundreds of them. I think there was like 50 or 60 boxes of book. And I thought maybe they were different books. They were all the same book. What was the name of the book? Fresh Off the Boat. Now, if you're not familiar with Fresh Off the Boat, you're not into sitcoms. Fresh Off the Boat is actually a TV sitcom. It's about an Asian family that comes to Orlando and opens a restaurant. And this is based on a true story. And it was the son of the lead character wrote the book. But it didn't sell. At least not all the copies. And so someone in Orlando got stuck with all these copies of this book, even though it's a hit TV show. Multiple seasons. The guy's a published author, but he's also producer of a TV series. This trend towards semi-reality TV shows based on true life. The Goldbergs is one of these. There just seems to be several of these things that have popped up. But even though I've strayed off the subject a little bit, the core subject's the same. Sometimes you succeed and sometimes you fail at something. And this thing with Tim's book, the book was a flop. And Kim Picazio got the book taken down because it was fake news. The whole thing was fake news. Tim Homseth was not only sloppy, he just didn't give a damn about the truth. He just wanted to make a name for himself. So he created this book and one other one. I think there's two of them that he did. The other one was an ebook. And so now I can go around saying, I'm a published author and I'm an award-winning journalist. Even though it was a token award at best. And he didn't win it alone, he won it as part of a group. And the newspaper that he won the article from fired him. Doesn't tell people that. But this is how Tim Homseth works. He comes up with nuggets of truth, bits and pieces. And then he stacks lies on top of the core truth to try and make it true when it's not. And people get sucked in. Because Tim Holseth supports Trump. Tim Holseth reads the Bible. Tim Holseth quotes the Bible. God and Trump. Automatic. I could go out, invent a name, start quoting the Bible, start throwing my support behind Donald J. Trump, and I'd make a fortune. Because of bias. Trump recognized it. Other people have recognized it. That there's a core group out there that if you tell them what they want to hear, you can't shake them. Nobody can shake them. Nobody can come up with the truth. Nobody can come up with anything and say, hey, this is all crap. Because your source is from the enemy. Your source is from Soros and Snopes. From this, that, or the other person. They're the enemy. We don't listen to the enemy. We don't care if they're telling the truth. We're not going to listen to the enemy. And the lies continue. And Timothy Charles Homseth and Phil McConnell and others are able to perpetuate their lies with no ramifications, no fact checking, none of it. And everybody, in the end, gets played for fools. So until tomorrow, this is William K. Murtaugh, Mert Witness 1. Have a good one.